The elegant concert hall fell silent as the custodian shuffled across the stage, mop in hand. Nobody noticed her lingering glance at the grand piano, fingers twitching with a secret rhythm only she could hear. When the famous virtuoso failed to arrive that evening, nobody expected salvation would come from the woman who cleaned their floors. But some talents can't remain hidden forever. Before we dive into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from. The polished marble floors of Westmore Academy of Music reflected Emma Chen's tired face as she pushed her cleaning cart down the empty hallway. A symphony of practiced scales and arpeggios echoed from behind closed doors, forming the soundtrack to her invisible existence. She paused outside Practice Room C, drawn by a particularly beautiful interpretation of Chopin. The melody floated through the air like a whispered secret. Emma closed her eyes, her fingers unconsciously moving in perfect synchronization with the music. "Excuse me, are you finished in there yet?" Emma startled, nearly knocking over a bottle of cleaning solution. Professor Harlow stood before her, arms crossed, eyebrows raised in that particular way reserved for people she considered beneath notice. "I'm sorry, ma'am, just finishing up." Emma quickly averted her eyes and resumed her work. "Well, hurry along. Dean Richardson needs this hallway spotless before the Goldstein competition preliminaries tomorrow. We have judges flying in from Vienna." Professor Harlow's voice dripped with impatience as she checked her watch. "And please remember to empty all the wastebaskets this time." "Yes, ma'am." Emma nodded, her face burning with embarrassment. Professor Harlow lingered a moment longer. "And try not to disturb the students. They need absolute concentration." After the professor disappeared around the corner, Emma exhaled slowly. 6 months at Westmore, and still the staff treated her like an inconvenience. She finished cleaning the practice rooms, carefully wiping fingerprints from the gleaming black pianos without making a sound. When the final student left for the evening, Emma locked the janitor's closet and shouldered her worn backpack. Most nights she headed straight home to her tiny apartment, but tonight something pulled her back toward Practice Room A. The largest practice room housed the Academy's prized Steinway. Emma stood in the doorway, heart racing. She'd never dared before, but tonight she glanced down the empty hallway, then slipped inside, quietly closing the door behind her. Her hands trembled as she approached the magnificent instrument. The polished ebony surface invited her touch. No one would know. Just a few minutes. Emma sat on the bench, her posture automatically adjusting as her mother had taught her long ago. She placed her hands on the keys, feeling their cool smoothness beneath her calloused fingers. Taking a deep breath, she began to play. Debussy's Clair de Lune flowed from her fingertips, tentative at first, then with growing confidence. The music filled the small room, each note perfect and pristine. For the first time in months, Emma felt truly alive. So absorbed was she in the music that she didn't notice the door opening. "What do you think you're doing?" The sharp voice sliced through her reverie. Emma's hands froze above the keys. Dean Richardson stood in the doorway, his face a mask of disbelief and anger. I'm sorry," Emma stammered, rising quickly from the bench. "I was just—" "You were just what? These instruments are worth more than you'll make in a decade." The dean's voice was cold. "Who gave you permission to touch them?" "No one, sir. I apologize." "You're the custodian, correct?" "Ms. Chen, Emma." "Chen. Well, Ms. Chen, consider this your first and only warning. Your job is to clean the academy, not to play our instruments. Is that understood?" "Yes, sir." Emma's voice was barely above a whisper. "Good. Now please leave before you damage something valuable." Emma nodded, gathered her backpack, and hurried from the room, humiliation burning in her chest. She'd known the rules when she took the job, known her place. She'd been stupid to risk it. Outside in the cool evening air, Emma pulled her jacket tighter around her shoulders and started the long walk home. The memory of her mother's voice echoed in her mind. "Music isn't for people like us anymore, Emma. Some dreams cost too much." As she approached her apartment building, her phone buzzed with a text from her roommate, Jade. "How was work?" "Still invisible," Emma typed back. "Even more so today. At least invisible people can't get fired." When she opened the apartment door, Jade was curled on their second-hand couch, textbooks spread around her. "You're late," Jade said, looking up from her nursing school homework. "Bad day?" Emma dropped her backpack and collapsed beside her friend. Got caught playing a piano after hours? Jade winced. Ouch! By who? The dean himself. Double ouch. Did he fire you? Surprisingly, no. Just humiliated me enough to make sure I never touch a piano again. Emma grabbed a pillow and hugged it to her chest. I should have known better. Why did you do it? Jade asked, closing her textbook. Emma shrugged. I miss it. Sometimes I think I can still feel my fingers remembering what they used to be able to do. Before the accident, Emma nodded, unconsciously rubbing the faint scars on her right hand. Before everything. You never really told me what happened, Jade said carefully. Just that you had to drop out of Juilliard. Ancient history. Emma forced a smile. Anyway, I have an early shift tomorrow. The Goldstein competition preliminaries start and I need to make sure everything is perfect. You know, you could still play for yourself. We could look for a cheap keyboard. No. Emma's voice was firm. That part of my life is over. I've accepted it. Now I just need to be grateful I have a job at all. She retreated to her bedroom before Jade could argue further, closing the door on possibilities that hurt too much to consider. The next morning, Emma arrived at Westmore Academy an hour earlier than usual. She polished every surface until it gleamed, emptied every trash can, and made sure each piano was perfectly positioned. When the first competitors began arriving, she made herself scarce, pushing her cart into the service elevator. The hallways filled with nervous young pianists and their hovering parents. Emma kept her head down, changing paper towels in bathrooms and collecting discarded coffee cups. No one glanced twice at her, just as she preferred. Just before noon, she was mopping a water spill in the front lobby when she overheard a heated conversation. What do you mean Leopold isn't coming? Professor Harlow's voice was sharp with alarm. Dean Richardson lowered his voice, but Emma could still hear him. His flight was cancelled due to weather in Frankfurt. There's no way he'll make it for the demonstration tonight. But the gala. We have 200 donors expecting to hear Beethoven's Emperor before dinner. It's the centerpiece of the fundraiser. I'm aware of the situation, Margaret. I'm handling it. How? None of our faculty can prepare that concerto on such short notice, not to the standard we've promised. We'll adjust the program. Perhaps one of the competition judges. They're all performers in their own right, Isaac. They'll see it as an insult to be asked to substitute. Emma kept mopping, gradually working her way closer to their conversation. What about Una Park? Suggested Professor Harlow. She's performing with the symphony next week. On tour in Singapore, the dean replied. I've already checked. Emma had nearly reached the doorway when someone bumped into her, sending her stumbling forward. Her mop clattered to the floor directly at Dean Richardson's feet. Ms. Chen, he said coldly, I believe there are facilities requiring your attention elsewhere. Yes, sir. Sorry, sir. Emma quickly retrieved her mop and started to back away. Wait. Professor Harlow was studying her with narrowed eyes. You're the janitor I caught listening outside the practice rooms yesterday, aren't you? Emma swallowed hard. I was cleaning, ma'am. And the one who was playing after hours? Dean Richardson added. Professor Harlow turned to him in surprise. Playing her? Emma wished the floor would open up and swallow her whole. I should go. What were you playing? Professor Harlow demanded. Debussy. Claire de Lune. Emma whispered, her cheeks burning. And how did it sound, Isaac? Professor Harlow asked the dean. He looked uncomfortable. I didn't particularly notice. I was more concerned with the breach of protocol. She was quite good, actually, came her voice. All three turned to see Anton Weber, the department chair, standing nearby with a cup of coffee. I walked by while she was playing, he continued mildly. Quite a sensitive touch, thoughtful phrasing. Emma stared at him in shock. She hadn't realized anyone else had heard her. Professor Weber, surely you're not suggesting... Dean Richardson began. I'm not suggesting anything, Weber replied, sipping his coffee. Just making an observation. Professor Harlow gave Emma a dismissive look. Well, regardless, we still need a solution for tonight. I'll continue making calls. Good luck with that, Weber said, walking away. As he passed Emma, he gave her a small nod. Emma quickly retreated with her cleaning supplies, mortification making her face burn. The conversation would only add to her reputation as the custodian who didn't know her place. She finished her shift without incident and was about to leave when Professor Weber approached her in the staff hallway. "Ms. Chen, do you have a moment?" Emma froze, clutching her backpack. "Yes, sir? That was Debussy's Clair de Lune you were playing, correct?" "Yes, sir. Where did you study?" The question caught her off guard. I was at Juilliard, briefly." His eyebrows rose. "Juilliard? What happened?" Emma unconsciously flexed her right hand. "Life happened, Professor." He nodded thoughtfully. "Do you know Beethoven's Fifth Piano? Concerto, the Emperor?" Of course. The question seemed bizarre coming from one of Westmore's most respected faculty members. "Could you play it?" "Now?" Emma's heart skipped. "I haven't touched that piece in years. But you know it. I performed it with the Youth Symphony before I left school." Professor Weber checked his watch. "Follow me, please." Confused but unable to refuse, Emma followed him to the recital hall. The space was empty, the lights dimmed except for the stage where a magnificent grand piano waited. Professor Weber gestured toward it. "Show me what you remember." Emma shook her head. "Professor, I can't. I'm not prepared, and I should be leaving. Humor an old man, Ms. Chen. 5 minutes." Something in his voice made her set down her backpack. She approached the piano hesitantly, sitting on the bench and placing her hands on the keys. Taking a deep breath, she began the majestic opening chords of Beethoven's Emperor Concerto. The music came back to her like a long-lost friend. Her fingers remembered what her mind had tried to forget. As she played, Professor Weber watched intently, his expression unreadable. After several minutes, he raised his hand. "That's enough, thank you." Emma stopped, suddenly self-conscious. "It's very rusty, I'm sorry. When did you last play this piece?" "About 5 years ago." "And when did you last practice? Anything at all?" Emma looked down at her hands. "I don't play anymore, Professor." "That seems like a waste," he said quietly. "Ms. Chen, we have a situation tonight. Our soloist for the gala concert has cancelled, and we need someone to perform this exact concerto." Emma's eyes widened. "You can't possibly be suggesting—" "I am precisely suggesting that. You know the piece. With a few hours of practice, you could be ready." "That's insane," Emma whispered. "I'm the janitor. Tonight, you could be our soloist." Emma stood abruptly. "No, absolutely not. I haven't performed in years. I can't just step on stage in front of 200 of the wealthiest arts patrons in the city. People who collectively donate millions to this institution." "Exactly!" Emma's voice rose in panic. "Professor, thank you for the opportunity, but I can't." Professor Weber sighed. "Very well, it was worth asking." He started to walk away, then paused. "May I ask what happened? Why did you leave Juilliard?" Emma hesitated, then rolled up her right sleeve, revealing a network of scars along her forearm. "Car accident. Glass-severed tendons in my hand and wrist. It took 3 surgeries and 2 years of physical therapy just to be able to use it normally again." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "But you recovered. I just heard you play. Not to the level I need to be." Her voice was bitter. "Not to the level Juilliard demands. Not to the level I demand of myself." "And so you gave up music entirely. Became a janitor at a music academy? That seems like an unusual choice for someone trying to escape their past." Emma had no answer for that. "The dress rehearsal is at 4, Professor Weber said. "The orchestra will be there. If you change your mind, we have a concert dress that should fit you." He handed her a folder of sheet music and walked away, leaving Emma alone with the piano and a decision she never expected to face. For 20 minutes, Emma sat frozen on the bench. Eventually, she opened the score and began to play, slowly at first, then with increasing confidence. The familiar passages came back to her, muscle memory awakening after years of dormancy. She was so absorbed that she didn't notice Dean Richardson and Professor Harlow enter the hall until they were halfway down the aisle. "Professor Weber, this is absolutely—" Dean Richardson stopped short when he realized who was at the piano. "Ms. Chen, what are you doing here?" Emma stood quickly, nearly knocking over the bench. "I'm sorry, I was just leaving." "She's practicing," came Professor Weber's voice as he emerged from the wings, "for tonight's performance." "What? Professor?" Harlow looked aghast. "Anton, you can't be serious." "I've never been more serious," he replied calmly. "Ms. Chen studied at Juilliard and knows the piece. She's our solution." "This is absurd," Dean Richardson sputtered. "She's the janitor." "She's a pianist," Professor Weber corrected. "One who happens to work as a janitor currently. We cannot present a custodian as our featured soloist to our most important donors." Emma gathered her backpack. "He's right, Professor Weber. This was a mistake. I should go." "Play the cadenza," Professor Weber said quietly. Emma hesitated. "Please," he added. Setting down her backpack, Emma returned to the piano. She took a deep breath and launched into the first movement's cadenza, the most technically demanding passage of the concerto. Her fingers flew across the keys, drawing sounds of imperial grandeur from the instrument. The music soared and plunged, each note placed with precision and passion. When she finished, the hall fell silent. Professor Harlow was the first to speak. "Where did you study before Juilliard?" "The Shanghai Conservatory," Emma replied softly. "I came to America on scholarship when I was 16. And what happened?" Dean Richardson asked, his tone notably less hostile. Emma explained briefly about the accident and her withdrawn application from Juilliard. "So you became a janitor?" Professor Harlow asked incredulously. "I became many things," Emma replied. "A physical therapy patient, a survivor, eventually someone who needed a job." She met the professor's eyes. "The position here allowed me to stay close to music, even if I couldn't play it anymore." Professor Weber turned to his colleagues. "We have 3 hours until the dress rehearsal. We can continue this debate, or we can prepare our soloist." Dean Richardson and Professor Harlow exchanged glances. "Fine," the dean said finally. "But if this goes poorly, Anton, it's on your head." After they left, Emma turned to Professor Weber. "Why are you doing this?" "Because we need a pianist," he replied simply. "And because talent deserves a stage, regardless of who possesses it." The next 3 hours passed in a blur. Emma practiced with single-minded focus, addressing passages that felt rusty, refining interpretive choices. When the orchestra arrived, for the dress rehearsal she was ready. The conductor, Maestro Vargas, greeted her with professional courtesy, showing no surprise at the last-minute substitution. As they rehearsed, Emma felt herself transforming, shedding the invisible custodian and becoming once again the musician she'd been trained to be. After the rehearsal, Professor Harlow approached with a garment bag. "This should fit you," she said stiffly. "It's one of our recital gowns." "Thank you," Emma replied, touched by the gesture despite the professor's obvious reservations. "The hair and makeup people will meet you backstage at 6, Professor Harlow continued. "Try not to look so terrified. It undermines confidence in your abilities." Emma nodded, then blurted, "Why did you change your mind about letting me play?" "Professor," Harlow's expression softened slightly. "Because you play beautifully, and because Anton Weber hasn't been wrong about a pianist in 30 years. She turned to leave, then added, "Don't make him wrong tonight." In the dressing room, Emma stared at her reflection, barely recognizing herself. The midnight blue gown transformed her. The makeup artist had highlighted her cheekbones and eyes, while the hairstylist had arranged her normally practical braid into an elegant chignon. She was stretching her fingers when there was a knock at the door. "5 minutes, Ms. Chen," called the stage manager. Emma closed her eyes, focusing on her breathing. "You can do this. You were born to do this." When she walked on stage, the spotlights momentarily blinded her. The orchestra rose as she approached. The piano. Maestro Vargas extended his hand, guiding her to the bench with old-world courtesy. As her vision adjusted, Emma could see the audience, hundreds of faces, including many of the staff who had walked past her for months without a second glance. In the third row sat Dean Richardson, tension evident in his posture. Beside him, Professor Harlow watched with narrowed eyes. And at the back, standing rather than seated, Professor Weber gave her an encouraging nod. Emma placed her hands on the keys and waited for the orchestra's introduction. When she joined with those majestic opening chords, something inside her unlocked. Years of silence fell away as music poured from her fingers. She played with a maturity born of struggle, infusing each phrase with the emotion of her journey. The technical challenges that had once seemed insurmountable now served as vehicles for expression. Her right hand, once broken, now created beauty with every note. When the final triumphant chord resounded through the hall, there was a moment of absolute silence. Then the audience erupted. They rose as one, applause thundering through the space. Emma stood somewhat dazed as flowers appeared on stage. She curtsied to the audience, then to the orchestra, then to Maestro Vargas. As she took her final bow, she caught sight of Dean Richardson's face. He was applauding vigorously, his expression a mixture of astonishment and relief. Professor Harlow was dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief, and Professor Weber was beaming with undisguised pride. Backstage, Emma was immediately surrounded by well-wishers, orchestra members, staff, even a few donors who had managed to make their way backstage. Professor Weber appeared at her side, skillfully guiding her through the crowd to a quiet corner. "That," he said, "was extraordinary." Emma's hands were trembling with adrenaline. "Thank you for believing I could do it. I merely provided an opportunity. You did the rest." He hesitated, then added, "There's someone who'd like to meet you." A distinguished older woman approached, her bearing regal despite her advanced age. Emma recognized her immediately as Eleonora Goldstein, the legendary pianist for whom the competition was named. "Ms. Chen," Madame Goldstein said, her voice accented but clear. "Anton tells me you've been hiding at our academy." Emma flushed. "I wouldn't call it hiding exactly." "No? What would you call it when a Juilliard-caliber pianist becomes invisible by choice?" The old woman's eyes were kind but penetrating. "I heard your cadenza. Your technique is impeccable, but more importantly, you play from the heart." "Thank you, Madame Goldstein. I understand there were injuries, setbacks." She waved her hand dismissively. "All artists have obstacles. The question is whether we allow them to define us." Before Emma could respond, Dean Richardson approached, accompanied by several elegantly dressed patrons. "Ms. Chen, a magnificent performance." His smile was broad, his earlier skepticism nowhere in evidence. "Our guests are quite impressed. Several have expressed interest in sponsoring a full recital." Emma blinked in surprise. "A recital? Indeed. Perhaps a program of Chinese and Western compositions? Our cultural exchange series has an opening next season." The conversation continued, with more people joining the circle around Emma. Professor Harlow appeared, introducing her to journalists. Someone handed her a business card, a recording producer. Through it all, Emma felt as though she were watching herself from a distance, observing as her future rearranged itself before her eyes. Hours later, after the gala dinner where she'd been seated at the head table, Emma finally found herself alone in the now empty recital hall. She sat at the piano, running her fingers lightly over the keys without pressing them. "May I join you?" She looked up to see Professor Weber in the doorway. "Of course," she said, moving over on the bench. He sat beside her, his hands resting on his knees. "How does it feel to return?" "Overwhelming," Emma admitted. "I never thought I'd perform again. And now? Now I'm afraid to hope that this might be real, that I could have a second chance." Professor Weber nodded thoughtfully. "You... No, I heard you playing once before. Months ago, late at night. Rachmaninoff's second concerto, I believe. You thought the building was empty." Emma stared at him. "You knew? All this time?" "I suspected there was more to our newest custodian than met the eye. But it wasn't my place to push. Some journeys we must make in our own time." "Why did you wait until today to say something?" He smiled. "Necessity, partly. We truly needed a pianist. But mostly because I saw how you looked at the instrument this morning. Not with the caution of someone who fears pain, but with the longing of someone who misses an old friend." Emma considered this. "I was ready," she said softly. "Yes, you were." He stood to leave. "The question now is, what will Emma Chen do tomorrow?" After he left, Emma remained at the piano, thinking about his question. For so long, she had defined herself by what she had lost. Tonight had shown her what might still be possible. She began to play softly, a simple melody at first, then growing in complexity and emotion. She played for herself, for the empty hall, for the person she was becoming. When she finally left the academy that night, she didn't take the service exit as usual. She walked out the front doors, her head held high, no longer invisible. 3 months later, Emma sat in Professor Weber's office reviewing the program for her upcoming recital series. "I think we should include the list," she said, marking the paper with a pencil. "It balances the first half nicely." "Agreed," Professor Weber replied. "And how is your new position working out?" Emma smiled. After her performance, Westmore Academy had offered her a position as an assistant instructor, teaching piano to beginning students. "It's wonderful. The students are so eager to learn. And your advanced diploma program? Not too overwhelming with the teaching?" "It's challenging, but in the best way." Emma had enrolled in Westmore's Artist Diploma program, a pathway to rebuilding her performance career. "I'm exactly where I need to be." A knock at the door interrupted them. Dean Richardson entered, followed by a young woman in a custodial uniform. "Ah, Miss Chen," the dean said. "I'm glad I found you. May I introduce Lucia Mendez? She's just joined our facilities staff." Emma rose to shake the new custodian's hand. "Welcome to Westmore, Lucia." The young woman's eyes widened in recognition. "So you're Emma Chen. I saw your recital last month." "I am," Emma confirmed with a smile. "And if you ever want to use the practice rooms after hours, just let me know. I have keys now." As they left Professor Weber's office, Emma gave Lucia a tour of the building, pointing out shortcuts and helpful staff members. When they passed, "Practice room A," Emma paused. "Do you play any instruments, Lucia?" The young woman hesitated. "Violin. Not professionally or anything, just for myself." Emma nodded, understanding completely. Sometimes, for yourself is exactly where the most important music begins. That evening, as she practiced for her upcoming recital, Emma remembered herself 6 months earlier, invisible, silenced, believing her music was lost forever. Now her days were filled with teaching, learning, and performing. Her hands, once her greatest source of shame, had become again her voice. She thought of all the invisible people in the world, their talents unseen, their voices unheard, and she played for them. Her music a reminder that what seems broken can be the source of our greatest strength, that second chances arrive in unexpected moments, and that the beauty we create matters more than the path we take to create it. The most powerful talents, after all, are those that survive the silence.